Good evening. This is Mary Ellen McKay, Chair of the City of Nashua Zoning Board of Adjustment, and this is the January 24th, 2023 Zoning Board meeting. This evening's meeting will be conducted in a hybrid format. The meeting is accessible in person in the third floor auditorium of the Nashua City Hall, 229 Main Street, and via Zoom at the link posted in all public meeting agendas. Attendance via telephone is available using the Zoom connection details. Minutes of tonight's meeting, as well as audio and video recordings, will be available later at nashuanh.gov/agenda center. Please select Zoning Board of Adjustment. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-589-3056 and they will help you connect. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. The chair is in control of the proceedings and calls upon all who wish to speak in order as their raised hands are observed. The board follows the meeting protocols and procedures identified in its bylaws. The applicant will present their case for 15 minutes, followed by questions by the board. Next, persons wishing to speak in favor or with questions or opposition will be asked to speak for up to 5 minutes. If there are questions or opposition, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present a response. Finally, one and only one person with questions or in opposition will be permitted to speak again before the board deliberates and determines an outcome. A timer is used to manage the speaking time. Kate Poirier, our zoning board coordinator, will notify us when 1 minute is remaining and again when the speaker's time has expired. If you are participating by Zoom and wish to speak when public input is requested, please use the raised hand option, which can be found under reactions on a computer or the more menu on a phone. The chair will call you in turn. Please use the lower hand option when you have completed your question or comment. Please mute your microphone until called on to speak. Note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call. Tonight, we will be hearing requests for deviation from the Nashua zoning code in the form of applications for special exceptions and or variances. A special exception is a request that seeks permission to do something that the zoning ordinance permits only under special circumstances. To grant a special exception, 5 points of law are required to be met. These are outlined in the application and will be summarized in board motions. A variance is a request that seeks permission to do something the ordinance does not permit. Variances also have 5 points of law to be met, different from those for special exceptions. For the City of Nashua bylaws and State of New Hampshire revised statutes, a minimum of 3 or more affirmative votes are required to approve any application. In addition, this board will hear all scheduled cases if a quorum of 3 voting board members is present at this meeting. Any citizen has the right to contest the decision that this board makes. Should we render a decision that you believe is an error, you have the right to request a rehearing. A written rehearing request must be received by the City of Nashua Planning Department within 30 calendar days from the date of decision. Should this board not grant a rehearing request, you can file an appeal directly to the New Hampshire Superior Court. Please contact Mr. Falk of the Planning Department for more information. For this meeting, we have the following full board members in attendance. We have Steve Lionel, our vice chair, Jack Courier, our clerk, JP Boucher, member, and we also have 2 alternates, Mr. Jamin Kara and Mr. Josh Neely, pardon me. In addition to board members, we also have with us Mr. Carter Falk, Deputy Planning Manager, and Ms. Kate Poirier, our zoning coordinator. I do not see Mr. Matt Sullivan or Mr. Sam Durfee, the Planning Manager and Community Outreach Director. Let us start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. There are no board members participating via Zoom, correct? Thank you very much. And a further explanation, alternates may fully participate in discussion, but will vote only if a full board member recuses themselves or if there are fewer than 5 full board members in attendance. For tonight's meeting, we have 4 full board members in attendance, so we will alternate between Mr. Neely and Mr. Minkara for all cases who are alternates. And now I will take a roll call. Mr. Lionel,
Present.
Mr. Courier,
Present.
Mr. Boucher,
Present.
Mr. Minkara,
Present.
Mr. Neely,
Present.
and myself, Mary Ellen McKay. There are five of us, six of us present, five of us for each voting. In the first case, Mr. Neely, you will be the voting member, and we will alternate. Mr. Minkara, you will have case two, and we will go back and forth. I will now read the first case into the record. The Belanger Family Revocable Trust. The owners, David N. and Paula R. Belanger, trustees and applicants. 11 Bramble Drive, Sheet B, Lot 383, requesting variance from Land Use Code Section 190-16, Table 16-3, to encroach 1 foot into the 20-foot required front yard setback to construct a 6x23 roofed farmer's porch. This is in the R9 zone in Ward 9. Is someone here to present this application? Please step forward to the mic, state your name and address for the record, and if it's more comfortable, you can take the mic off that wand because we have to hear you speak into it for the record.
My name is Paula Belanger from 11 Bramble Drive in Nashua.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay, so we're looking to the flooring of the porch. We'd like to go out 6 feet from the house to have 6 foot in order to put a couple of rocking chairs so that people can get past it without tripping on the chairs. And we were afraid that if we only had the 5 feet, which would keep us in the 20-foot zone, that we would have problems with people tripping. I have an elderly mother-in-law and an aunt, and they're the ones that I'm really afraid of catching their feet on the chairs. So we were hoping that we could get the variance for the 1 foot to go out a little further.
Does that summarize your case?
I believe it does. Do you have any
Okay.
questions?
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions? Mr. Courier?
I'm just curious, it seems to me like Bramble Drive is a pretty quiet street, where in your backyard, you got a pretty busy street or just after your backyard. I just was curious if maybe folks on your street tend to maybe, use the front yards more than the backyards, just because it's maybe quieter than Northeastern Boulevard.
Yeah, the boulevard can get loud sometimes with the traffic going by. So sometimes we do like to kind of sit out front with elderly people so we can hear each other speak better.
That was the only question I had. Thanks.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here present who would like to speak in favor of this application? And there's no one on Zoom, is that correct? Okay. Is there anyone here who would like to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application? Seeing none, and again, there's no one on Zoom, so I will close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Lionel?
I'm in favor of the application. I think it's a reasonable request. It's a minimal incursion. And I think the result will look good.
Thank you. Mr. Boucher?
I'm also in support of the application. Again, I think it's a reasonable request, and I don't think anybody would know whether it's 5 feet or 6 feet, the extra 1 foot going out of the house. So again, I'm going to support the application.
Thank you. Mr. Neely?
The footprint of the house compared to the neighbors seems to fit a little closer to Bramble than the others, and I really think that's what takes it into that 20 foot. It will take this into that 20-foot exclusionary zone. I'm in favor of this. Really, it's just going to add to the character of that house, and it will fit into the character of the neighborhood.
Mr. Courier?
I'm also in support, as I had mentioned in my question. It's, I think that this street, people would want to recreate or lounge more in the front yard just by the way the busy Northeastern Boulevard and the power lines in the back. So to me, I'm not surprised, and I think it's within the spirit and intent and meets the criteria because of the uniqueness of the street in that regard.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara.
I also support the application for all the reasons stated, and I would just also note that I think the 6-foot depth is really practically the minimum necessary for this to be usable.
Thank you. And I agree with all my fellow board members for all the aforementioned reasons. It is a really adorable house, and I think the porch is gonna look cute. But yeah, 6 feet, even 6 feet is kind of limiting. So would somebody care to make a motion? Thank you, Mr. Boucher.
I'd like to make a
And-
mo-
Do we have a second?
I gotta make a motion.
He hasn't made the motion.
Oh. That's- Okay. Yeah, but hear Jimmy even laughing.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the area variance for the Belanger Family Revocable Trust owners David N. and Paula R. Belanger, trustees, applicants, 11 Bramble Drive, Sheepy Lot 383, requesting a variance from Land Use Code Section 19-16, Table 16-3, to encroach 1 foot into the 20-foot required front yard setback to construct a 6-foot by 23-foot roof farmer's porch, it's in the R9 zone, Ward 9. We find that the variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, given the special condition of the property. Again, most notably, the house is closer to the street. In the total picture of the property, again, the house in the buildable envelope is closer to the street, hence why the applicant is here. The benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than variance. We find that it is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. We find it will not adversely affect property values of surrounding parcels. We find that it's not contrary to public interest, and we find that substantial justice will be served. So again, I make a motion to approve the area variance.
I'll
Thank
second.
you. Thank you, Mr. Lionel. Mr. Lionel, how do you vote?
Mr. Lionel votes in favor.
Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Neely, how do you vote?
Mr. Neely votes in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. That's 5 votes. That's unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Belanger. Your variance request has been granted. Should you have any questions, concerns, please refer back to either Mr. Carter Paul or Ms. Kate Poirier in the planning department. And thank you for your presentation. And also, anyone has the right to challenge any decision made by this board, and they have 30 days with which to do so. So again, any questions, please refer back to planning. Thank you for your presentation this evening. Case number 2. Case number 2, Chestnut Woodburn LLC and Axis Realty owners, James Gibo Alpha Landscape Contractors applicant, 71.5-73 Walnut Street, sheet 81, lot 67 and 70, requesting variance from Land Use Code Section 190-16, Table 16-3 for minimum land area 9,279 square feet existing, 20,909 square feet required to add 2 dwelling units on 3rd floor of existing 4-unit multifamily building for a total of 6 dwelling units. This is in the RC zone in Ward 4. Is there someone here to present this application? Please step forward to the mic. State your name and address for the record. And if it's easier, you can pull the mic from the wand.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good evening. My name is Jim Gibo. I live at 11 Highland Road in Wyndham, New Hampshire. I currently own and manage with a partner 53 units in the city of Nashua. This particular building we've owned for about 2 years. We've done some mild renovations. The building was actually in very good shape from the previous owner. The 3rd floor is very spacious. It was at one point livable space. There is very good access from the common areas. And we have an excess of parking there. We have 16 spaces. So I believe it's a separate lot that's part of this building is just a parking lot. So we have 16 spaces for what is now a 4-unit. And we're hoping to get a ability to add 2 more nice units up there.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Lino?
A little bit, I was looking at the pictures and regarding the stairway is what's puzzling me. Looking at the pictures, it looks like there's one stairway from the second floor up to the third floor.
There's,
Which would make.
there's actually 2.
Oh, there are actually?
Yes, there are actually 2.
Okay, so
Yep.
the pictures only show, all right.
Yep.
So this diagram that's in here shows 2 separate stairways and where do those go?
So they come from the common area. So there's, it's actually, it must have been I'm assuming back in the day was maybe a 2-family. That's why it has 2 different numbers. So you go through the common area to the second floor and then you would just continue just like you would go from the first to the second, from the second to the third upstairs.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Courier?
Just on those staircases, just noting on the photos, I mean, there weren't any banisters or handrails, but if this were approved, I assume that would all be brought up to code.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Our intent would be to put an actual knee wall at the top. It's closed at the bottom anyways, and we put a knee wall probably about 4 feet to separate the living space from the edge of the stairwell. Yeah.
See?
Yep.
And then just to clarify, the parking lot, does that support this facility, this building only? It's
Yes.
not used for other parking offsite or anything?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Neely?
So going back to the parking again, so in the application, I saw one spot, it said 16 spots, one said 14 spots. There'll be nobody parking on the street at any point, right? You have enough parking there to support this whole building?
I can't say other people won't park, but we have plenty of, parking to
Sure.
support this. Yes.
And the pictures here, this is the current state of the attic?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah, so it looks like it's been quite a while since someone's actually lived. This like old wallpaper, stuff like that, but
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one question. On the application, it says you want to add 2 studio apartments. Generally, a studio apartment has everything in basically one room. Are these going to be really not studio
It's-
apartments, just actual apartments?
it's actually going to be a 1-bedroom. Yes.
A one, well, okay. one
Yeah,
bedroom
it'll be
is
a
different.
1-bedroom. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because everything,
Yeah, because the way it's
Okay.
configured now, it'll be the kitchen area with a bathroom, and then one will be like a living room, a small living room and a bedroom, separate bedroom.
yeah, the way you had it diagrammed and the way in my head I was thinking of a studio didn't match, so
Right.
the
Yeah.
best thing to do is ask the question.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Are there no further questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Nobody here. And again, there is no one on Zoom. So is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition or with questions, comments, or concerns about this application? Again, seeing none, and there is no one on Zoom. I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Boucher.
I'm going to support the application. I believe that, again, we look at this lot and as the applicant stated, this lot comes with another side lot to it. Again, parking is plenty there. I think that the existing home certainly can accommodate the extra 2 units without impacting the neighborhood. Again, the neighborhood is, there's a lot of mix going on there, and there is several multifamilies in the neighborhood. So I don't see any reason why I would want to, deny the application. I think that it does a good job. And I also believe that this is also a good thing for the neighborhood because with these units here, the applicant has to bring these units up to code, fire code. There'll be significant improvements made to the building that has to be done just to get permits to make these 2 apartments. So I think all in all, it's a net gain for the neighborhood, for the city, and I think it fits right in.
Thank you. Mr. Neely.
I would support the application for all the reasons that Mr. Boucher just said. I really feel like he touched every pertinent point, so I support this application.
Thank you very much. Mr. Courier,
I also, basically, Mr. Boucher's captured my thoughts as well. I'm in support. I also, think of, there is a housing shortage. That is not something I think we should bypass zoning laws on, but it's always on our minds. But I think this property supports that. But this approval would, assist with that situation, kind of that macro economic situation. But even if that wasn't the case, I think this meets the criteria, like for the thoughts of Mr. Boucher is that.
thank you. Mr. Minkara, and Mr. Minkara, you will be voting on this case.
And I agree with really all the aforementioned comments, and we just add, I think, given the double lot, the density is really very consistent with what you find in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Lionel.
I'm also in agreement with my colleagues. I believe this usage and density is consistent with what you find in that neighborhood. So I support the application.
Thank you. I also support the application for all the aforementioned statements and rationale. It's a good thing. And Mr. Boucher is very correct. It'll bring the building right up to code. Would someone care to make a motion? Mr. Boucher, thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the area variance for Chestnut Woodburn LLC and Access Realty owners, James Gibo, Alpha Landscape Contractors, the applicant, 71.5 to 73 Walnut Street, sheet 81, lot 67 and 70, requesting a variance from land use code section 190-16, table 16-3 for a minimum land area of 9,279 square feet existing, 20,909 square feet required to add 2 dwelling units on a third floor in an existing 4-unit multifamily building for a total of 6 dwelling units. It's in the RC zone Ward 4. We find that the variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, given the special conditions of the property. Again, as we discussed, the home sits on a double lot, and the size of the current home indicates that there is really no exterior changes that need to be done. This is existing space in the third floor of this building. And then also as discussed, special conditions exist also that it fits right into the density of the neighborhood. We find that the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than variance. We find it is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. We find it will not adversely affect property values or surrounding parcels. We find that it's not contrary to public interest. We find that substantial justice will be served. So again, make a motion to approve the area variance.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Minkara. Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Curry, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Minkara, how do you vote?
Mr. Minkara votes in favor.
Mr. Lionel, how do you vote?
Mr. Lionel votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. That is a unanimous decision, Mr. Gibo, and so congratulations, your variance has been granted. Thank you for your presentation. As I've stated before, anyone has the opportunity to challenge any decision made by this board. They have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please refer back to either Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Poirier in the planning department. And congratulations and good luck with your project. Case number 3. McChandler LLC owner, 36 Chandler Street, sheet 42, lot 203. Requesting variance from land use code section 190-16, table 16-3 for minimum land area, 19,483 square feet existing, 55,757 square feet required to maintain 16 dwelling units where 5 units are permitted. This is in the RC zone in Ward 3. Is there someone here to present this application? please step forward. Speak directly into the mic or pull the mic off the wand if it's easier. And please state your name and address for the record.
Wait for little people. Can we make it taller?
Yeah, you just. should be able to-
Oh, there we go.
you go.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Good evening. My name's Elizabeth Hardigan. Can you hear me?
It might, is it easy?
Move over.
It might be easier to take it right out of the holder.
I think we'll be all right,
You
right?
got it?
Can you hear me?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Hardigan. I'm an attorney at Gottesman and Hollis, 39 East Pearl Street, Nashua. I'm here to represent McChandler LLC. And I think I should start with sort of an overview because it sounds like we're asking for a lot on this property. But this has been maintained as a 16-unit building since 1989. So we're sort of just asking for you to give us your approval that for something that has existed for more than I've been alive. Um, So, excuse me. I'm losing my voice a little bit. Just bear with me. So as I said, it's been in existence since 1989. My clients have owned it since 1984 and had 16 units since then. This really came into question when they put it up for sale and someone said, we need to see that all of your units are legal. And there's really no evidence of that, any evidence of anything since 1984 with the building department. However, there have been inspections over the years by the fire marshal, and code enforcement has also been in there as late as 2015. So I guess I'll get right to the sort of 5 points, if you will. Granting the requested variance will not be contrary to public interest. This will not affect the character of the neighborhood. As I said, it has been 16 units since 1989. There'll be no change to the exterior of the building and will not threaten the public's health, safety, or welfare. The existing units have been there, like I said, and in 1989, there was a full sprinkler system installed and inspected over the years. Most recently in 2015, as I said, for carbon monoxide, and it will not be contrary to public interest. The proposed use will observe the spirit of the ordinance. This will not threaten adjacent values to the property. There's no change. There's no public safety issue. The character of the neighborhood will not change. Substantial justice will be done for the property owner by granting the variance. As I said, this is an existing use. We're not asking for any changes. The property was actually originally the church rectory, the former excuse me. The former St. Francis Church is just across the street. And so the priests and the clergy used to reside there. The records show it was, like I said, in 1984 is really the only change and only information we had in the file. It was an office building with 5 apartments, and that's sort of where 5 lives comes from. And in 1989, there was a incident on the property where the fire department came, and that's when they did an inspection and said, you need to install sprinklers. And coinciding, that's when the city started taxing this unit as 16 units as well. So at the 1990 tax came out as 16 units. There'll be no harm to the public. There'll be no change to the exterior. As I said, the public is accustomed to having 16 units there. There hasn't been a problem with that. The denial of the variance will create harm to the owner and the tenants that live there, which is not outweighed by any harm to the public. The proposed use will not diminish the values of the surrounding properties. Again, there'll be no real change outside, and the adjacent properties will not be affected. And special conditions exist for such literal enforcement of the ordinance result in unnecessary hardship to my client. This is an existing use. The structure contains multiple types of units and various numbers of bedrooms. It's not, overly dense. There's no question of overcrowding. There's multiple studios in there. There's 1 bedrooms. There's 3 bedrooms. It's really a very diverse building, which provides a lot of housing for the city. There's no fair and substantial relationship to the purpose of the ordinance in preventing overcrowding in this situation because it already exists and there hasn't been an issue. And I think that pretty much covers everything I need to say. If anyone else has any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Lionel.
Just want to touch on something that I heard you say. The present owners have owned this, property since 1984. You
Mhm.
said that, right? And, but somehow, between then and 1989, it went from 4 or 5 units to 16 units.
Correct.
And so the current owners made that change.
Correct.
Mr. Neely.
How many parking spots are on site now?
Knew you were going to ask me that. I believe it's 24. Let me just pull out my application because that has the correct number on it. It's 23 spaces. And we took away one of the spaces because there's currently a shared dumpster with a neighboring property.
And you still have a variance to park in the church parking lot, as was noted in the 1980 variance request.
Nothing has changed. There's never been a parking issue. It's just everybody, like I said, there's a lot of smaller units there, and my clients have said that because it's close to a bus stop, not even a lot of people who live there don't typically own cars.
So according to the 1980 CBA, they flat out say that the church will allow them parking at all times, and if that changes, they have to come back to the ZBA to let them know that. So I would just assume that the church. is still
Correct.
allowing that
To my,
even
to
if
my,
it's a church.
right, to my knowledge, there's been no change to that, but I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from anybody on the board? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Is there anyone here present who would like to speak in favor of this application? And seeing as there is no one on Zoom, I will ask if there's anyone here present who would like to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application. Seeing none, and as there is no one on Zoom, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Neely, and Mr. Neely, you will be voting on this case.
So this is a fascinating case of a metamorphosis of a building. And thank you, staff, for providing all this paperwork going back to 1980, because this was actually a pretty cool thing to work through, looking at the verbiage. And just as I was following the bouncing ball here, they were in front of the zoning board in 1980 saying, we're doing probably 5 law offices. Nobody will ever live there. We want to make sure that we never have to deal with tenants. And by the time we get to 1984, that changes to 1 office and 5 apartments. 1992, it goes to quote apartments over 8. And that had to do with how it is taxed. And then in 2022, they got caught for the 16 apartments. Really just a fascinating metamorphosis here. We are in an interesting time with the housing crunch in Nashua, that we need housing. I think with the current state of affairs, it's hard for us to come back on these folks and say, you know what, we need to change back to 5 offices or something equivalent. We all know that many office buildings are now open. Commercial real estate is not the hot thing it was a few years ago, and now it's all about housing. So at the end of the day, I'm going to vote in favor of this application. That being said, having seen the metamorphosis over the years, I think by them coming to the zoning board today, it kind of sets a hard line in the sand that this building will not change again from 16 apartments unless you come before the zoning board. Like this is the hard and fast stop right here. And hopefully somebody in 30 years is not looking at these records again to try and figure out what happened to this building. So I am in favor of it. It fits into the character of the neighborhood. My concern was about parking. Quite honestly, like I know you all did, I did a drive-by. It didn't look like they were overflowing with parking issues there. And I think to take away, these 16 units and to half it or go down lower would actually put a burden on the community displacing these folks. And while it would happen gradually, we're not in a place right now in Nashua that we should be doing that. So I'm in favor of this application.
Thank you very much. Mr. Courier.
I did a site walk early on before we got the package, and we just see what the ask is. And I'm like, wow, this is a huge ask. The attorney said, I think it's the biggest ask I've ever seen in all these years. Then when I get to the Waze just brings me there and I'm like, oh, look at this, it's gotta be the old rectory, and then the package comes and essentially I agree with everything that's in the package. I, I, I appreciate, Mr. Lionel, clarifying the fact that these owners had upped it to 16 in their ownership. It certainly was a long time ago. I think it speaks volumes that we're not hearing anything against it by abutters, because I think it's kind of regular that when there's an ask for heavy density, that we hear complaints, mostly about parking, I think, secondly about noise and commotion, but we're not hearing anything tonight. I don't have any reason to suspect there is that issue that's gone on there because the property is so big to support it. You think of I also think of there's a housing issue, but the Nashua downtown master plan is for higher density in this part of Nashua. I mean, just a bit east of here are all those other apartments, and this is really in the same kind of neighborhood, I would say. So the old rectory, it's a unique property, and while I mean, maybe there's a momentary pause of, well, are we kind of okaying a situation that the current owner has expanded maybe illegally many years ago? That just doesn't really strike me. If anything, it's kind of punitive. I think it fits the bill now and it meets the criteria. So it has my support.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara.
I also support the application, really for all the reasons that were stated, and the fact that not only has it been there for probably 30 years, but we've been taxing it for over 20 years as a 16-unit building. And also I would just note that directly next door is the Xavier House that has 34 units of assisted housing, a very consistent density in an overall high density area.
Thank you. Mr. Lionel.
Yeah, as my question indicated, I hate better to ask forgiveness than permission type of thing. But given that this building has been occupied as 16 units for 30 plus years, and that the city recognized it by tax records as having 16 units, I can't see any good reason to deny this application. So I'm going to vote in favor.
Thank you. Mr. Boucher.
I'm going to also support the application for the reasons stated. And again, we've seen cases similar to this. I mean, to say that there's been stuff that things that have existed for a long time, that, as we said, have been taxed a certain way, but not caught. And the only reason why I believe the applicant is here today and not 10 years from now, whatever, is because, there was, as stated by the applicant's attorney, that, there was a sale that they're trying to sell the property, right? So again, in research, this is what we found. So I think it would have been found at one point or another. But again, existed all this time. I don't think there's a density issue here, again, compared to what's out there in that area. And as noted, I drove by several times, just doing errands, and you look over and parking lot was never really full. So again, I don't think there's any issue here, so I'm going to support the application.
Thank you. And I too am going to support the application for all the reasons mentioned. I have probably been going by this, on this street, looking at that property and the church since 1983. And I haven't seen any change. You don't notice any cars. The building outside doesn't look different. You wouldn't know if you didn't know. And so, and also on the emotional side of it, you could not want to put people out onto the street. That's the hard part, especially in this economy when we need the housing. And so for all of these reasons, I too am very much in support of this application. And would somebody care to make a motion? Thank you, Mr. Lionel.
I'd like to make a motion on behalf of the owner, McChandler LLC, address 36 Chandler Street, sheet 42, lot 203, requesting variance from land use code section 190-16, table 16-3 for minimum land area 19,483 square feet existing, 55,757 square feet required to maintain 16 dwelling units where 5 are permitted. This is in the RC zone Ward 3. The board finds that the variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property. This property has been occupied as a 16 dwelling units and has been taxed by the city as 16 dwelling units for over 30 years. No changes are being asked to make to the property. And there's the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by any other reasonable method. If the board was to deny the application, they would have to throw out 11 of their tenants. And the board does not believe that that's reasonable. The board believes this is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. The density of that neighborhood is about similar to what this building has. We haven't found that there's been any problems with that location, that none have been reported to us. We don't believe it will adversely affect the property values of surrounding parcels. We believe it is not contrary to public interest and substantial justice will be served. So I make a motion to approve the variance.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Mr. Boucher, for your second. I saw your hand. 1 second. After the Mr. Courier's.
Who's that? Second, Mr. Boucher.
Mr. Neely, how do you vote?
Mr. Neely votes in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Lionel, how do you vote?
Mr. Lionel votes in favor.
Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. Congratulations. Your variance has been granted. As we've stated all evening, any member of the public has the right to challenge any decision made by this board, and they have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please refer back to either Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Poirier in the planning department. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your presentation, and congratulations on your variance. Thank you. Case number 4. City of Nashua owner 10 Whipple Street, Mine Falls Park, Sheet E Lot 1487, requesting special exception from Land Use Code sections 190-111 through 190-117 to work within the 75-foot prime wetland buffer of the Nashua River for tree removal work to allow for sewer siphon rehabilitation. This is in the RB zone, Ward 4. And there is somebody here to present
Yes.
this case. Please state your name and address for the record. This is a special exception.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
My name's Amy Gill, and I'm a senior engineer with the City of Nashua Public Works Division Engineering Department located at 9 Riverside Street. I'm here to request that special exception, as you mentioned, to work in the wetland in the 75-foot prime wetland buffer of the Nashua River to remove 3 trees at one location in the park and 4 trees at another location in Mine Falls Park. The city, we need the trees removed in order to gain vehicle access to 2 locations where we have to do some rehabilitations of sewers that are located throughout the park. In 1968, large interceptors were constructed in order to stop the flow of direct discharge to the rivers and streams. There's a large interceptor. In order to do that, these interceptors took the most direct route to get to the wastewater treatment plant, which required crossing underneath waterways. So there's 8 locations in the city where we have these sewers that cross underneath on the riverbed or the stream bed of waterways. In Mine Falls Park, there's 2 locations, one near exit 6, where the Division of Motor Vehicles is for the state, and over by on the other side by the Mohawk Tannery. We have pipes that cross right through the park there. In order to construct these pipes. We had to construct large concrete chambers. There's 3 barrels that cross at these locations. They go down the embankment, under the riverbed and back up. And at both ends, they have large chambers that are about 10 by 15 feet in size. Recently, the city has aggressively started inspection of the sewer system, looking at the most critical infrastructure and oldest infrastructure first. And these siphons are critical infrastructure. We found that some of the pipes were deteriorating, the concrete pipes that are deteriorating on the inside. Siphons basically run under pressure because they are lower than the gravity system. The water comes in, there's always wastewater in these pipes and comes back up under pressurized. It's a pressurized system in order to keep the flow to go. So what we need to do is to line these pipes using a trenchless technology. We have to get access to these concrete chambers within the park with a vehicle. What we do is we put a lining inside these pipe. It's like an inside out sock, if you can think of it that way. We start at one of the concrete chambers. They put the sock in, go down the slope, across the bottom, come back up. We cure this material with, it's a epoxy lined material that you put hot water in, which pushes this material against the pipe, and basically you get a brand new pipe. So in order to do this type of trencher technology near the waterways, we have to cut down some trees that are near these concrete chambers in order to get the vehicles there. So that's the purpose of my request. Concerning the points of law, there is no parking impact at all. This is a temporary situation. There's no structures or anything to be constructed. It's just to bring the vehicle in. Won't have any traffic congestion. We'll go through the park, do the work, and the vehicles will leave afterwards. It'll probably take 3 to 4 days to do this at each location. And we went before the National Conservation Commission on January 3rd and received a favorable recommendation. That's the short, quick story. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. And yes, we have the report from the Conservation
great.
Commission. Does anyone have, Mr. Boucher?
I just
And
want to
Mr. Curry?
see the from the applicant that you will follow the 9 wetland special conditions.
Yes, that we had before. Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Courier?
I was just curious, does the city do the lining work or do we hire someone else?
We contracted out. We actually contract, while we have our own team of CCTV trucks that can do the smaller pipes, we also have to hire out the actual beginning inspection, because these pipes are 36 inches, 48 inches, 8 inches in diameter. We just don't have the equipment to look at the pipe to take the first look. So we will also have a contractor to line them as well.
And I was curious, does this handle the sewer flow from like kind of all of Northwest Nashua?
This is one of the largest and longest interceptors we have. Yes, it starts out near Amherst Street. It comes down through the middle of Nashua and crosses down through Main Street, crosses the park area, flows down by Tampa Street, comes down to Main Street by the bridge, follows the Nashua River, out towards the Merrimack River, where it takes a right and heads down to the treatment plant.
Well, for years, when I wander around in the wilds of Mine Falls, I come across the concrete box. I'm like, what the heck is this thing?
Me
The
too.
application, now I know.
And unfortunately, they do have the candy cane vents there that they have to use in order to keep air in the system, and on occasion there may be an odor, so apologize for that.
Mr. Neely?
On the, by the Fairmont Street siphon chamber,
Yes,
there was some trees that had orange and black tape on them. Is that not for this project as well? I certainly found the 7 that you marked for the X's.
so on the other side, they're doing that, so there's a proposed redevelopment of that property on the Fairmont Street side. On both the Fairmont Street side and the side where the exit 6 motor vehicle building is, there's clear access in order to gain to those chambers. Yeah, those marking on ours on the Ohak Tannery side.
No, these are in Mine Falls, right next to these, right next to your site, your chamber inlet. in Mine Falls.
Oh, there's
Yeah.
more tape on them?
So I assume that's just not you, right?
Yeah,
So I
probably.
found the 7, so we're not cutting down the rest of the ones that had tape on them because it was probably.
Well, they may be cutting down some that are outside the buffer area. So when the sewer was constructed in 68, there was a 30-foot easement that was needed, and we have a 20-foot easement there today. And the trees were clear cut at that point when the sewers were put in. So in order to get access to those vehicles, some of those trees will be cut too, but they're outside the buffer area. Sorry for my misunderstanding of the question.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you. There's no one here present to speak in support. There's no one on Zoom to speak in support. There's no one here to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition. And there is no one on Zoom who is there to speak with questions, comments, or opposition. And so I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. And Mr. Minkara, you will be voting on this case. Mr. Courier,
My thoughts, I think it meets all the criteria for special exception. The application stands on its own, it's obviously needed. And, you know, the 7 trees, they'll grow back like they did before. It's all good in my book.
thank you. Mr. Minkara,
I also support the application. It clearly needed. The impacts are very temporary, as noted.
thank you. Mr. Lionel,
I'm in support of the application.
thank you. Mr. Boucher,
I'm in support of the application for all the reasons spoken to.
Mr. Neely,
I am also in support of the application for the reasons spoken.
and I am also in support of the application for the reasons spoken. And thank you, Mr. Boucher, for acknowledging the wetland special conditions, and the applicant, thank you for your agreement to those 9 points. Would somebody care to make a motion? Thank you, Mr. Boucher.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the special exception for the city of Nashville, owner of 10 Whipple Street, Mine Falls Park, sheet E, lot 1487, requesting special exception from land use code section 190-111 through 190-117 to work within the 75-foot prime wetland buffer of the Nashville River for tree removal work to allow for a sewer siphon rehabilitation. It's in the RV zone, Ward 4. We find it is listed in the table of uses. We find it will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. We find it will not overload public water, drainage, or sewer or other municipal systems. We find that the special regulations are fulfilled. Again, the wetland special conditions also been attested to that they agree to all 9 conditions. It will not impair the integrity or character of the neighborhood or be detrimental to health, morals, welfare of the residents. Also, on January 3rd, the Conservation Commission gave favorable recommendation with two statements for best management practices and the work to be done during when the ground is frozen. So with that, I make a motion to approve the special exception.
And
I'll second.
thank you, Mr. Lionel. Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Curry votes in favor.
Mr. Minkara, how do you vote?
Mr. Minkara votes in favor.
Mr. Lionel, how do you vote?
Mr. Lionel votes in favor.
Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. Congratulations, Ms. Gill. That is a unanimous decision by the board. And as we've stated previously, any member of the public has a right to challenge any decision made by this board. They have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, concerns, please refer back to either Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Poirier in the planning department. Other than that, thank you for your presentation and congratulations. Your special exception has been granted. Moving on with the business of the meeting. There's no motion for the hearing. We don't have an agenda because we have an extra week. So has everyone had the opportunity to look over the minutes? Does anyone have any comments or edits to the minutes? Are they good? Everyone seems okay. Then in that case, I'll ma-
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 10th, 2023.
thank you. Someone
Shea,
can-
second.
Thank you, Mr. Boucher.
Who's voting on this? Would it be Mr. McGinley?
Oh, Mr. Neely, if we go back and forth. Mr. Neely, how do you vote?
Mr. Neely votes in favor.
Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Lionel, how do you vote?
Mr. Lionel votes in favor.
And myself, Miriam McKay, I also vote in favor. The minutes have been approved. That seems to be the end of the business of the evening. So
7:25.
at 7:25 PM, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Sorry, what was that? 7? Short meeting for one.